Welcome to the Making Madrid, a podcast about life in Spain's capital, covering history, culture, food, and much more. The show is presented by me, Felicity Hughes. I'm a tour guide and freelance writer, and you may have seen my work in publications like Lonely Planet or the Financial Times. This episode, I have a very special guest, Instagram superstar Joy Figueroa, who's also a guide, but she specializes in foodie tours of Madrid. And if you're into food, you should definitely check out her Instagram account, which is Joy of Madrid, because it's just exploding with really, really tasty looking dishes and travel tips, because she's passionate about Spain and she goes all over. The point of this interview, though, is to center in on the foodie culture of Madrid. And Joy knows a lot about the perfect tortilla, where to eat cocido, where to have a vermouth. Well, we go over quite a lot of different foodie subjects. So if you're into discovering more about Madrid's cuisine, then please take a listen. All right. Hello, Joy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And I believe you've lived in Spain for quite a while. How long has it been so far?
It's been 14 years, which makes me feel rather old to say. I think you've been here even longer than I have, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, I haven't. Because
okay.
I was living in Japan before here, so I'm coming up to 12 years, I think.
Okay, so you're not far behind me. I moved here. I actually came out to visit for like a long-term visit when I was 22. I was here in 2009 and I moved here in 2010. So in my head, it feels like I'm still in my 20s, but not so much anymore.
And what was the reason you came here?
The first time I came out to Madrid, I had just graduated university back in the USA and I wanted to travel Europe and finish learning Spanish. So Spain seemed like the perfect place to do both of those things at the same time. I came here. I was here for about 5 months. It was kind of like an au pair, except I was not being paid, which is the less fun version of being an au pair. And it was living with a family in exchange, hanging out with their kids in exchange for room and board, basically. And I just loved Spain. There was something about Madrid that really spoke to me. I really connected with the city. And I felt like I hadn't really experienced it on that first visit. Living out in the burbs, I felt very disconnected. I didn't have much of a social network. So I wanted to come back and kind of do it over. And I told my mom that I would be home within a couple of years. I think I said 2, maybe 3 at the max. And my Spanish husband and I just bought an apartment in Madrid. So I think we're staying.
Okay. And your Spanish, I got the impression it's very good, right? Do you have any kind of Spanish speakers in your background, in your family?
Yes and no. And that's so yes, in the sense that my father and his family are Puerto Rican. And no, in the sense that I wasn't raised speaking Spanish, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to come here and finish learning Spanish. I thought it was kind of stupid that I was half Puerto Rican and didn't speak any Spanish beyond, like hello, goodbye, thank you. So it's just come from living here for all these years, working hard at learning it.
Oh, wow. Did you tell your dad off?
We've had a couple of conversations about how it's such a shame when people don't teach their child their second language. But he doesn't really speak much Spanish anymore either. So
okay.
I can't be too mean to him about it.
And have you had a conversation in Spanish since?
With my father? Interesting question. Not again, yes and no, in the sense that I've interacted with him in Spanish here in Spain on visits where, we're out at a restaurant and he's ordering in Spanish. But when he and I speak, it's always in English.
Yes, because it's always hard to make that switch. Like with my husband, we started off our relationship in English. And now I think we're finally tipping into using both equally.
Oh, good for you. No, it's once your brain gets used to communicating with someone in a certain language, it's hard to switch away from that, I think.
And why did you choose Madrid over Barcelona? Because this is always a big question for lots of people.
I have to be honest, I didn't choose it as in I weighed up my options. I went to both. I saw both. I kind of lucked into Madrid. I came here that first time and I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. This will do. And I love Barcelona now, but I have to be honest, the first couple of times I visited it, I didn't have that same click with the city. It took me maybe 3 times to really adore Barcelona the way I do now.
Because you also write about Barcelona, right? You don't limit yourself to Madrid.
Well, when you say right, do you mean like the things I do?
Well, yeah, post content and
Yeah, I mean, yes, in that I post content anytime I go anywhere that I enjoy, I want to share about it. So that includes Barcelona, Sevilla. I'm in Segovia a lot. That's where my in-laws are. So I do try to share things where I'm in Barcelona and I'm, at this restaurant or this museum, whatever. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on Barcelona the way I am in Madrid.
Okay.
Because I'm also a tourist there,
And speaking of Madrid, what's your favorite barrio in the city?
That's a hard question. Can I answer with multiple?
Sure. And tell me why you like each one.
Yeah. So we recently moved barrios. We're now in Carabanchel. So we're just outside the city center. And I'm really enjoying Carabanchel. It's a neighborhood that I didn't really know before we moved here. And I like that it still very much has a barrio feel. Like we've started developing a relationship with the butcher in our nearest butcher shop and, the grandma that lives across the hall. So I really like that smaller neighborhood feel having left the center. Although I do occasionally still miss Salesas. We were living in that part of Chueca, sort of over towards Recoletos for 5 years. And living there was great. It's such a great neighborhood. It's so vibrant. There's so much good food and drink and always something happening. So there are moments where I'm like, oh, if only I had multi-million euros in my bank account and could buy an apartment in Salesas. And then I guess if I had to choose just a neighborhood like I really enjoy every time I go, I always think I should go there more often. I would maybe say Conde Duque. I really like Conde Duque, especially the area around the Conde Duque barracks, the cultural center there. I think it's got a lot of really interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, it's Malasaña, and yet it's like a quieter corner of Malasaña. I love that square.
Yeah, I think that's a really good description of it.
Yeah, the little square with a convent adjacent to it, just by Conde Duque, is gorgeous.
That's it's a charming little spot, isn't it?
So I'm seeing a lot of things on your Instagram page lately where you're going out to all these restaurants and living the foodie dream. So as you're so clued in, what's the best thing you've tried recently?
Okay, I'm going to give you, again, 2 answers. This might be a running theme every time you ask me to choose a favorite thing. In terms of sort of modern, not Spanish food, we had incredible smash burgers recently at a place called Galgo, which we actually went to because my husband is a craft beer nerd. So it's a smash burger place founded by a Spanish brewery. So that was sort of our connection to them. And the burgers were just incredible. I'm American.
Burger. I've heard the name loads of times and I'm still clueless.
Kind of what it says on the tin. They take a burger and then they smash it really flat on the griddle. So it gets thin and crispy rather than like thick and juicy.
Oh.
And they're kind of having a moment in Madrid. I assume you agree. You've seen them everywhere in the last few months, right? Like everywhere feels like they're doing their own version of a smash burger.
Yes, yeah. I've seen it on Instagram and kind of gone, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Now you know. Yeah, that was nice. It was nice to have. I think we went in summer, so it's in Malasaña. It was like a really empty day, Madrid summer kind of vibes. And they were just spectacular burgers.
What was the name of that place?
Galgo, Galgo.
Okay. All right. And the other one?
And then just this past weekend, I was at a bar here in Carabanchel, so in our new neighborhood. And just having some cañas with a friend. It's not a fancy bar. It's not a modern bar. It's kind of the opposite of a Malasaña smash burger place. But it's nice because they do free tapas. And they brought out this tapa of potato chips with just a couple of cured anchovies on top of them. And it was so delicious. The anchovies were like, not spicy, what's what I'm looking for, like pungent with flavor. And the salty chips and the beer, it was just a kind of a perfect moment. So I'd say those are like my two latest foodie highlights.
This is the thing about moving out of central Madrid, that you go to a bar and more often you'll get a more generous tapas. Like in my neighborhood in Uceda, I often am more likely to get a piece of cheese or some meat or something a bit more substantial than, the bowl of uh, potato chips. That is the standard thing.
Yeah, it's nice to be out of, Sol and Malasaña, where you're lucky if you get potato chips or olives, right?
Yeah, it's a good reason to explore the areas. Have you been
Absolutely.
to any of because Carabanchel is also really well known for the art scene. So just
Hmm.
going slightly off topic for a moment, but have you been to like Veta and any of the other galleries yet?
We went recently to the first for me of the galleries around here. Actually, no, that's the live second time we've gone to galleries. We went to 95 Gallery, which is pretty close to our house, actually.
Mhm.
And it's this incredible space, which what for me I liked about it was that they've decorated the space as if it were an art piece, as well as the art pieces hanging inside it. So it's just, it's completely free. You just wander in. Everything is for sale. I didn't really look at price tags to be honest, but it was a really enjoyable experience. And then the other time, like the other experience I've had here in Carabanchel in terms of its art scene, back in just before summer, I guess. So May, June, it must have been. They organized Cruza Carabanchel.
Yeah.
Have you experienced it? Have you come to
Yeah, I
see
went
the?
last year. It was fantastic.
Am I right that it was May, June, or am I? This is the year that we
Yeah,
moved
yeah.
out,
I
so
think
a
it
bit
was
of a
around
jumble.
that time.
Yeah.
Spring,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, it was spring. It was nice weather. That's what I remember. And I went to a few different events. There was a concert I went to. There was a cultural talk in the neighborhood. And then some friends and I went to a gallery opening. They had some new show that they were putting on, and we went and had a beer and checked it out. You're right, though. It's great that Carabanchel. I like that Carabanchel is an arts neighborhood, but I also like that Carabanchel doesn't want to be just like any other arts neighborhood. The slogan is "This is Carabanchel, not Soho,"
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I like that. I like that sort of not authenticity, that like insistence on maintaining who they are and not being pushed towards being something else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Getting back to food,
Mm.
are there any foodie trends you see emerging in the city? We already discussed the smash burgers. Anything
Yeah.
else?
Well, so I would say smash burgers are maybe on their way out soonish. Madrid, in general, things come and explode and then sort of fade away. So
Hmm.
I'm sure you remember, like frozen yogurt was everywhere for a while. Brunch, people are like obsessed with, and you're like, that's not really a brunch, but okay, call it that if you want. I think that Lebanese food or like Middle Eastern food is going to start having a bit more of a moment. There are a few restaurants I've been to in the last year. Moune is one, which is like higher end um, Middle Eastern food, but then there are a couple of little places like Rasif in La Latina, and I think people are starting to get into that idea of food that's familiar but still different, if that makes sense. It's nice to see um, Spaniards as a whole becoming more interested in other cuisines because I think the traditional way of thinking here, like the traditional old school thought here would be, well, why would you want anything other than Spanish food? It's the best food in the world. You're like, look, I love Spanish food, but I also love Japanese and Mexican and all the other stuff. So it's nice to see them embracing that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's good about Madrid. You can get like cuisine from anywhere in the world, and I think the foodie scene has really developed as I've been living here. Um, But
Yeah.
getting back to Spanish cuisine, because you're a bit of an ambassador for it, and
Mhm.
people go on your foodie tours really to experience that. If I booked a foodie tour with you, what could I expect?
When I put together a tour. All of my tours are customized, meaning that when you and I are making the plans of time and day and so on and how many people you're coming with, I have a series of questions I ask, which are basically to make sure, first of all, that you're not allergic to anything, or that, there's not a surprise vegetarian in your group, but also to figure out, is there something that you have heard about that you want to learn more about, or are you really into Spanish wine or whatever it is? And then I start to pick and choose from what I have, like a stable of stops that I can choose from. And they're places that I like personally. I wouldn't take anybody anywhere that I wouldn't want to go out for something to eat or something to drink. That I think they represent what it is to go out for tapas, right? They have good food. Obviously, it's enjoyable. You're going to leave happy. And that, that the people that own it and run it are nice. I think that's a big part of the experience wherever you go. When I travel, bonding or having a positive interaction with a waiter, it really changes your experience of that place. So all of those are the things that I want to try and bring in when I'm putting a tour together for someone. And what that means is that there's not a standard route. So it totally depends on where you're staying, what's close to your hotel, etc. But I generally like to start with an aperitif. I love introducing people to Spanish vermouth. I'm a vermouth lover, and I wasn't when I moved here. So if I'm able to, convert other people, that's always the goal. Then I generally will hit a couple of tapas bars, and it could be anything from a place that's famous for its jamon, a place that's really well known for its tortilla. I took people this week, I had a tour. I took them to my favorite wine bar where they do incredible cheese plates. So we had a couple of glasses of wine and some cheese. And what I like about doing a food tour is that I get to talk about not just what you're eating and tell you this is tortilla, it's made with this, etc. But tortilla is this classic dish and everybody eats it in this way. It's famous for this. I kind of get to make it a cultural thing. And that's what I really like about Spanish food is that as you get immersed in the eating and drinking of Spain, you're really getting immersed in the culture of Spain.
Yeah, okay. And I wanted to ask you about tortilla as well, because it's very
Go on.
controversial in Spain. I used to teach English and I liked giving people like debate topics. And one of the most heated one was tortilla with or without onion,
I love
runny or well done. So
Okay.
how do you like yours?
I have strong feelings about tortilla. And sometimes when I take people on a tour to a tortilla place, I tell them, this is what tortilla is supposed to be like. The other people that do it wrong. I like my tortilla slightly runny. I don't like it betanzos style. So for anyone listening who doesn't know what tortilla de betanzos is, it is a very wet tortilla. For me, it's a little not cooked enough. I like my egg a little less eggy and a little more cookedy. But I don't like it fully cooked solid. Like I want it to kind of break apart and be juicy when I'm cutting into it with my fork. So I vote runny and with onion. I think it's always better with onion. I'm sure I've offended half of the population right now.
And what about vermouth? Or vermouth. It's a big thing in Madrid. It's, as far as I can gather, it's a sort of wine that's got a few spices put in it.
Yeah, I mean that's a brief description of vermouth. Absolutely. Vermouth is a fortified wine, so it does start life as just a standard white wine. Surprisingly, it gets caramel added to it, which is why it's both generally red, not always, but that's the standard kind here. And very, I don't want to say very sweet, but quite sweet. Vermouth exists on sort of a spectrum of very sweet and very bitter. I tend to like the middle ground, leaning towards the sweeter side. So once you've got your wine, your fortification, your caramel, then that's when you add in all the spices that you've mentioned, Felicity. And it's not just spices, it's also lots of herbs. Things like orange peel and cinnamon and clove are common ingredients. Sometimes people say it reminds them of a Christmas drink. And it can also have things like juniper berries, which is what makes gin ginny. So it can often have that sort of herbal, herbaceous flavor profile. And vermouth here in Spain, I wouldn't say it's just a Madrid thing, actually. I would say vermouth is kind of a universal across the country. It's the aperitif. So you're supposed to have it before you have a big meal, lunch on the weekend, dinner during the week. They think it warms up your appetite.
Yeah, yeah. I see it as a big Sunday thing. Like
Hmm.
there used to be the Mercado de Productores in Matadero, and there was a vermouth stand there, I remember. But that's sadly not going anymore. It's such a shame from a foodie's point of view. Are
But
there
the Mercado de Productores is in other locations now. You know that, right?
do they have food stalls as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've only been a couple of times. Once since living here. We're closer to it now. And then once when we were still in the center.
Hmm.
Every, I don't think it's every 3 weeks. I think it's like the first and the third weekend of every month. The first and the third Sunday, excuse me, of every month. There is the location in the Planetario, next to the Planetario, Más bien. So it's
I
pretty
thought that was
convenient.
just stalls selling produce, not actually things to eat.
No, it's got vermouth as well. It's what we go for. I like to have a vermouth while I wait in line to buy my fruit.
Oh, that's great. And you're right by Mercado de Motores as well, so then you can
Pop
kind of,
over.
yeah.
A good Sunday
Or
plan, yeah.
stagger over if you've been in the vermouth
Hmm.
part.
Yeah, there's Mercado de Productores in other locations too, but they're all north of the city and just totally inconvenient for us to get to. So,
And vermouth isn't particular to Madrid, but Madrid does have its own wines. Have you tried any?
yeah, I have. So Madrid is not really a famous wine region in the sense that um, I don't think it's a name that most people would look for actively on a menu, but Madrid does have some really great wines. I tend to think that the Madrid reds are slightly better than the Madrid whites, which
Mhm.
does make sense when you think about the climate where we are, right? Hot days, cold winters, pretty extreme temperatures, generally better for red grapes.
Mm.
There, hmm, um, there is a town that I've been to called Cadalso de los Vidrios. I'm not sure. I'm probably misremembering it, but I think that's what it's called. That I went to on a wine visit years and years ago with a really good friend of mine who owns a wine shop. So if he thinks a wine is good, I'm trusting him.
Mhm.
Uh, and we went to this little bodega. We did the wine visit. There was a big tasting, and I just remember having such a nice time, being like, I'm in this random little pueblo. I have no idea where I am. There's nothing else going on here. Nobody would come here for anything except this wine visit. But they were fab. And actually, sort of hilando, going back to things you've already mentioned, what I liked best of what that bodega sold was their vermouth. They had a really fabulous vermouth.
Mhm.
Mm.
And the other big thing in Madrid as well, in foodie terms, is the cocido.
Hmm.
Um, where would you recommend to go for this dish?
So cocido, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, cocido madrileño, as Felicity says, it's, the dish of Madrid. I guess that's debatable, but it's one of the dishes of Madrid. It's this massive feast of a meal. It's a slow cooked stew that has beef, pork, chicken, chickpeas, potatoes, usually cabbage, maybe some other veg, but it's a multi-course meal because the very first thing you're going to be served is the broth that all of those things are cooked in or cooked together in with some angel hair noodles. And then you'll get another dish, either one or two second rounds, with all of the veg and the chickpeas, and then like all of the meat.
Mm.
Um,
And
and
where's your favorite place to go for it then?
I have two. One is one of the oldest restaurants in Madrid. It's called Malacatín. It's actually in La Latina, and I think they do one of the best cocidos in the city. Very hard to get into because as soon as the weather becomes vaguely cocido appropriate, it books up. You have to call and reserve in advance, but it's highly, highly, highly worth it in my opinion. And it's got a great ambiance. You feel like you're stepping back in time. It's a really fab location to visit. And the other one I really like, which surprised me, is a place called Los Calayos. It's on the Plaza Mayor. And I'm usually a massive skeptic of eating anything on the Plaza Mayor, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's the only place that I actually like of the few that I've tried, to be fair, because most of them are, serving paella at dinner and they're standing there asking you to come in. And I'm like, nah,
Mhm.
no, thank you. But Los Calayos is in the corner of the Plaza Mayor closest to Tirso de Molina, basically. It's in that southeast corner. They've been there for, I don't know, 100 something years. It's very old school Spanish, very family friendly. And for me, it's kind of the epitome of like a Sunday lunch with your family place. So they're not necessarily famous only for cocido, but they do a really, really good cocido.
Mm-hmm. Is there a Madrid dish that people may not have heard of that you think is worth trying?
Well, speaking of the Plaza Mayor, another Madrid dish that you people maybe have already heard of, but just in case, the bocadillo de calamares, so a fried calamari sandwich, which I think a lot of Americans think sounds weird. You're like, it's fried. Why are you putting it on bread? And my answer is always, just try it. You'll love it. It's delicious. But Madrid does such fabulous seafood that it's such a simple dish. It's literally just fried calamari and bread and like a squeeze of lemon. Nothing else going on. But the calamari is so good. And the bread is, soft and squishy, and the calamari is crunchy. It's just a really fab bite. And when you're visiting, it's great to eat because it's the only thing you're really supposed to eat on the Plaza Mayor. Everything else, like we said, it's all, tourist trap paella restaurants, except for the one I've recommended.
Yeah, the little, my favorite ones are down the Calle Botoneros, which I think is in the same corner you mentioned as the cocido
It is directly across the street from Los Calayos.
Ah, okay. So that's the good corner.
Yeah. Of those two calamari places, though, La Campana and La Ideal, which one do you like better?
I have to admit that usually we do it as a kind of Christmassy thing with my husband's friends, and we choose the one which has the smallest queue. And I think they're kind of neck and neck. Which is your favorite?
It was an unfair question of me to ask you because I think they're both really good. But I know that it's a little bit like the tortilla thing. I think people have strong feelings about it, probably depending on where your parents took you when you were little, And I've even heard rumors that they're actually run by the same people. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, well, they both definitely have queues out the doors always. Yeah. I mean, you can never get it immediately, but
they're doing something right, whatever it is.
Yeah. The other great aspect of Foodie Madrid is I can't say it's a new thing because it probably started around the 2000s with the markets. When I first came to Madrid many years ago, the markets didn't have food stalls and they were dying. And then they've been regenerated, and now they're like foodie paradises where you can go tapas hopping and bar hopping, trying different tapas. Which is your favorite market?
Okay. I like a couple of markets. So I love Anton Martin, which I think is probably one of the better known ones. I think that Anton Martin has done a really good job of staying traditional and modernizing, as you've said, right? Keeping the old school stuff where what markets used to be. It's just shopping, right? But also having really fabulous food stalls. And Anton Martin has a little bit of everything. There's Mexican, there's Japanese. There's a really famous Japanese place inside there called Yoka Loka. And inside Anton Martin is one of my all-time favorite restaurants in Madrid. It's called Doppelganger. And it's founded and run by a chef who had a Michelin-starred restaurant here in Madrid, and then decided that he was kind of over the Michelin thing, shut down the restaurant, and set up shop inside the market. And it's just, every time I take people there, they leave encantados. They're like, this was so good. It's so innovative. The flavors, the this and that. So Anton Martin always has a special place in my heart, partly because of Doppelganger. I also love Vallehermoso. I've been there recently, actually. We were there for their tapas mini festival last weekend or the weekend before. And Vallehermoso has, it's got great, like spicy Asian food. It's got craft beer. It has a restaurant called Tripea, which in some ways is kind of like Doppelganger, really innovative, really special. Tripea is one of those places where you have to wait for like the minute that their reservation system opens to jump on getting a booking. But it's worth it. I love Tripea. And I would say my third, like my other in the top three markets is the one of Tirso de Molina, which is a bit deceptive because it's not in Tirso de Molina. It's actually, it's kind of over our way. You know, you're in Uceda, I'm next door in Carabanchel. And then if we keep going west from there, we would get to Puerta de Angel, which is where Tirso de Molina's market is.
Yes, the red brick one.
Have you been?
Yes, I love it. Yeah. And they have
a good market, isn't it?
I think they opened the terraza, the outdoor seating in the pandemic, and they haven't stopped since. So that's an amazing area to sort of spend a Saturday night. I love it. Fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. It's just got really good, I don't want to say it's got good vibes, but it just feels very homey and like everybody's welcome. Everybody knows each other. Great and drink, which is almost the most important part, right?
Yeah. And you're out trying, it sounds like you're out trying things in restaurants a lot, but do you ever cook at home?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not out at restaurants as often as it seems as I am on my Instagram. We cook at home a lot, actually, I would say. Especially having just bought an apartment this year, we are aiming to do more like at home plans. So we have friends over for dinner. I consider myself a good cook. Yeah, I really like cooking. My husband is also a really good cook, but we always say that we have very different cooking styles. I'm much more, I can just open the fridge and be like, oh, I know that these things will go well together. Let's just throw something together. And he's a bit more labor intensive traditional recipes. So we kind of complement each other really well.
The real test here is whether or not you can make a good paella.
Oh, I fail then because I don't do rice. My husband is the rice master, and therefore I don't even try.
That was a horrible trick question, actually, because I think you can be a good cook and not make good paella, but it's such a craft, isn't it?
It really is. And it's such a labor of love. Can you make good paella?
No, and I don't even try. My sister-in-law is Valenciana, so she gets lumbered with the task of making the, huge paella for the family.
Yeah, but
and I just step back.
Capable hands, right?
Yeah, but everyone's got strong opinions about it. It's too much pressure. I wouldn't even want to try.
Yeah. But also, like, if a Valenciana is cooking your paella, I don't think you're allowed to opine on it. You shut up and eat it.
Yeah. What foodie souvenirs do you think people should buy when they come to Spain?
Always saffron, because it's so lovely, such good quality here, and so much more affordable than back home. At least coming from
very expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, I assume it's expensive in the UK as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not cheap here because it's the pistil of a flower plucked one per flower per year, so it's never going to be cheap. But I do think it's more affordable here than it is in a lot of places. I also love to recommend that people buy olive oil. Spanish olive oil is just spectacular. And again, affordable. And I like introducing people to different kinds of olive oil that they might not have had before. So, Arabiquina or Picual, whatever. Getting to take that home, I think, is always a really nice foodie souvenir. And maybe, so you didn't hear this from me, but jamon. Because at least to the USA, you're not supposed to take it with you. The I don't know, the USDA doesn't like that it's not cooked. It's just cured. But I always joke that my mother says if I want to stay in their Manhattan apartment, I better bring them ham. So I always bring some jamon ibérico de bellota home with us.
Okay. So you have to get good at smuggling it.
Yes, especially when you spend, 25 euros per packet.
Yeah, that's good stuff, though. To wrap things up, I always ask people at the end of the podcast the same two questions.
Okay.
The first one is, what is your favorite Spanish phrase and why?
I like this question. I like that Spanish has so many phrases about food. I think it demonstrates how obsessed with food they are. And how, if we're not in the process of eating, we're either cooking or talking about what we're going to eat next. So I like phrases. I like vete a freír espárragos, which literally means go away to fry asparagus.
Oh, can you repeat that one again for me?
Vete a freír espárragos.
Ah, vete a freír espárragos. Okay.
And I mean, in English, I guess I would translate it as like, I'm not sure what word I can say in the podcast, but like, get out of here. Go to heck.
And why is frying asparagus is seen as not a good thing to do?
I guess so. Maybe. I mean, I've never thought about it that way. I don't know why they chose asparagus.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, continue.
Just that, and then thinking of this about food ones, I also really like me importa un pepino,
Ah, yes.
which literally means I care one cucumber, and is a way to say like I don't give a crap, which I think is kind of charming.
Yeah, it's a lot cuter than I don't give a crap.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not to say that Spanish people don't swear, because they
Oh,
swear
no.
a whole lot.
No. I chose two family-friendly examples.
And to finish things up, what's your favorite place off the beaten track in Madrid?
Good question. Off the beaten track. I mean, I guess off the beaten track can be a little bit debatable, like how track is tracking.
Especially in a city. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always people somewhere.
Yeah. But maybe I'm going to focus on a museum. This is just the first thing that's come to mind for me. I really love the archaeological museum here. It's the Museo Arqueológico Nacional, and it's not a hidden gem. People know of it, but I think it's one of the best museums in the city that a lot of people don't go to. Don't get me wrong, I love the Prado. I think the Reina Sofia is amazing. I would say that Sorolla, but it's closed for the next year and a half while they do big renovations on it. But I think the Man is a really cool way to see a sort of different version of the history of Spain. You get all the tribes that have come through over the thousands of years and the impact the Romans left and so on and so forth. So I think it's something a little off the beaten track.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's as well known as the other big museums.
Mm-hmm.
And the big attraction for me is the old Mudéjar ceilings that I think they've removed from places in Seville and other places around Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sort of taken from this sort of Muslim workmen who Christians like to reutilize their art. So it's all these sort of abstract geometrical shapes, painted beautiful colors, very classic Spanish style. It's just gorgeous. But then my neck hurts after looking at the photos.
Go home and put a hot rice bag on it.
All right. Well, I think that about covers everything. And if people want to get in touch with you and book a tour, do they go to your Instagram page?
Yes, please. My Instagram is Joy of Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually see a little bit of what I do on tours on my Instagram, and also just drop me a message and I can give you more information about, pricing and availability. And we can put together a fun little route.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to talk to you, Felicity.